The iron shackles bit into Olivia Montgomery's wrists as the stagecoach lurched over another rut in the dusty Texas road, and she wondered if dying of thirst might be preferable to whatever awaited her in Leno. The year was 1878, and the summer heat beat down mercilessly on the wooden roof above her head, turning the coach's interior into an oven. Two marshals sat across from her, their faces impassive beneath wide-brimmed hats, rifles resting casually across their laps. They had barely spoken to her during the 3-day journey from Austin, treating her like cargo rather than a human being. Olivia's dark auburn hair hung limply around her face, damp with sweat and dust. At 22 years old, she had never imagined her life would come to this. The charges were theft, grand larceny they called it, though the truth was far more complicated than the judge had cared to hear. A wealthy merchant's son had accused her of stealing a diamond brooch worth more than she could earn in 5 years of working at the hotel. The fact that he had tried to force himself on her, that she had fled his room in terror, that the brooch had somehow ended up in her apron pocket during the struggle, none of that mattered to the men who decided her fate. So they sentenced her to 5 years of hard labor and decided to ship her west to a prison work camp near Leno. The judge had smiled when he pronounced the sentence, as if he were doing her a favor by not hanging her outright. Olivia had learned quickly that justice was a luxury reserved for those who could afford it, and she was not among them. The stagecoach came to an abrupt halt, throwing her forward against her chains. One of the marshals grunted and peered out the window. "What is it?" The other asked, his hand moving to his rifle. "Someone in the road." Olivia's heart began to pound. Bandits were common on these routes, and she had heard enough stories to know that being a prisoner would not save her if they decided to rob the coach. The door swung open, flooding the interior with blinding sunlight. "Afternoon, gentlemen," a voice said, calm and unhurried. "I am afraid I am going to have to ask you to step down from there." "This is a federal transport," one of the marshals barked. "Move aside or we will move you." "I do not think so." The voice remained steady, almost pleasant. "You see, I have got 4 men positioned around this coach, all with rifles trained on you. Now, I am a reasonable man and I would prefer not to spill blood today. So why do not you both climb down nice and slow, leave your weapons inside, and we can all walk away from this?" Olivia strained to see the speaker, but the angle was wrong. She could only make out a tall figure silhouetted against the bright sky. The marshals exchanged glances, weighing their options. Finally, with obvious reluctance, they set down their rifles and climbed out of the coach. "Smart choice," the voice said. "Now, I want you to walk down that road about 100 yards and sit down in the shade of that cottonwood tree. Stay there for an hour and nobody gets hurt." "You are making a big mistake," one marshal called back, but he was already moving. Footsteps crunched in the gravel, approaching the coach. Then a man appeared in the doorway, and Olivia found herself looking into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin and dark blonde hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. A bandana covered the lower half of his face, but she could see the crinkles at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled often. He wore dusty denim pants, a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, and a gun belt slung low on his hips. His eyes swept over her, taking in the chains, her disheveled appearance, the bruises on her wrists where the metal had rubbed her skin raw. Something flickered in his gaze, something that might have been anger or pity or both. "Well," he said, his voice softer now that it was just the two of them. "They were not lying about you being in here." "Who are you?" Olivia managed, her throat dry and scratchy. Instead of answering, he pulled himself into the coach and settled onto the seat across from her. Up close, She could see that his vest was well made despite its worn appearance, and his hands, as he reached for her shackles, were calloused but clean. He produced a small metal pick from his pocket and began working on the lock that held her wrist chains to the floor of the coach. "What are you doing?" she asked, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Getting you out of here." The lock clicked open, and her hands were suddenly free, though the manacles still encircled her wrists. He moved to her ankle chains next. "There was a man in Austin who heard about your case. He did not believe you got a fair trial. He paid me to intercept this transport and get you out." "Paid you?" Olivia's mind reeled. "Who? Why?" Questions for later. The ankle chains came loose. He stood and offered her his hand. "Right now we need to move. Those marshals are not going to sit still for long, and I lied about having 4 men positioned around the coach. There is just me." She stared at his outstretched hand, trying to process what was happening. "You are alone. You stopped a federal transport by yourself." Seemed like the right thing to do. His eyes crinkled again, and she realized he was smiling behind that bandana. "Are you coming, or would you prefer to continue on to Leno?" Olivia took his hand. His grip was strong and steady as he helped her out of the coach. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet hit the ground. 3 days of sitting had left them stiff and weak, but he caught her easily, one arm sliding around her waist. "Easy now," he murmured. "Take a moment." She became acutely aware of how close he was, of the warmth of his body against hers, of the faint scent of leather and sage. Her heart hammered in her chest, though whether from fear, exhaustion, or something else entirely, she could not say. "I can stand," she said, though she was not entirely sure it was true. He released her slowly, keeping one hand hovering near her elbow in case she needed support. "My horse is just over that ridge. Can you walk? I will manage." They moved quickly, leaving the stagecoach behind. Olivia's legs protested every step, and the shackles still on her wrists clanked with each movement, but she forced herself forward. True to his word, a magnificent bay horse waited in a small hollow just out of sight of the road. The animal was saddled and ready, with saddlebags that looked well stocked. "Up you go," the man said, lacing his fingers together to form a step. When she hesitated, he added gently, "I know you have got no reason to trust me, but I promise I mean you no harm. We need to put some distance between us and those marshals before they realize I was bluffing." Olivia placed her foot in his hands and let him boost her into the saddle. He swung up behind her with practiced ease, reaching around her to gather the reins. She stiffened at the intimate contact, but he seemed entirely focused on guiding the horse up and out of the hollow. They rode hard for the first hour, the horse's powerful strides eating up the miles. The man kept them off the main roads, following what seemed like invisible trails through the scrubland. Olivia clung to the saddle horn, her body aching with each jolt, but she did not complain. Whatever this was, wherever he was taking her, it had to be better than the prison work camp. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, he slowed the horse to a walk. They had entered a region of low hills covered in juniper and oak, with a stream cutting through a small valley ahead. He guided them down toward the water, dismounting when they reached the bank. "We will rest here for a bit," he said, reaching up to help her down. "Water the horse, refill our canteens. There is a town about 3 hours' ride from here where we can stop for the night." Olivia's legs buckled the moment her feet touched the ground. This time he did not just catch her, he lifted her bodily and carried her to a flat rock near the stream, setting her down with surprising gentleness. "You need water," he said, pulling down his bandana at last. His face was just as striking as she had imagined, with a strong jaw, straight nose, and that smile that transformed his entire expression. He uncorked a canteen and handed it to her. "Drink slowly. I know you are probably parched, but too much too fast will make you sick." She took the canteen with shaking hands and sipped the lukewarm water. It was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. He watched her for a moment, then moved to tend to his horse, murmuring softly to the animal as he removed the saddle and let it drink from the stream. "You never told me your name," Olivia said when she had drunk her fill. He looked up from checking the horse's hooves. Grant Navarro. I am Olivia, but I suppose you already knew that." "I did." He straightened, brushing dust from his pants. "And before you ask again, the man who hired me is named Samuel Chen. He runs a restaurant in Austin, and his daughter worked at the same hotel you did. She told him what really happened that night, about what that merchant's son tried to do to you. He felt terrible about not speaking up at your trial, afraid of losing his business if he went against such a powerful family. So he found me and asked if I could help. Help me escape, you mean?" The reality of her situation was starting to sink in. "I am a fugitive now. They will hunt for me. They will look for Olivia Montgomery, a convicted thief heading to prison," Grant said, settling onto a rock across from her. "They will not be looking for my wife, traveling with me to start a new life in New Mexico territory." Olivia's eyes widened. "Your wife?" "Just a cover story," he added quickly, holding up his hands. "I've got papers prepared, documents that show we were married 2 months ago in San Antonio. It is not real, but it will get you safely out of Texas and somewhere you can start over with a new identity. You seem to have a lot of experience with this sort of thing." Something flickered across his face there and gone too quickly for her to read. "I have helped a few people who found themselves in bad situations. Not all laws are just, and not all judges care about the truth." "Why?" she asked. "Why risk yourself for strangers?" Grant was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the stream. "My sister," he finally said. 5 years ago, she was accused of something she did not do. I was working a cattle drive in Montana, could not get back in time for the trial. They convicted her, sent her to a work camp. She died there 6 months later. Pneumonia, they said, but I know the truth. They worked her to death. She was 19 years old. "I am so sorry," Olivia whispered. "So am I." He looked back at her, and the pain in his eyes was raw and real. "I cannot save her, but I can help others who are in the same situation. It does not make up for not being there when she needed me, but it is something." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the gentle burble of the stream and the horses contented munching on the grass growing along the bank. Olivia studied Grant's profile, the set of his shoulders, the careful way he held himself. He was a man carrying a heavy burden of guilt, trying to atone for something that was not really his fault. "These shackles," she said, lifting her wrists. "Can you remove them once we reach town? I will need better tools than what I have got with me." He stood and moved closer, examining the manacles. His fingers were gentle as he turned her wrists, checking the damage. "They have rubbed you raw. We will need to clean these wounds and bandage them before they get infected." "I have had worse," she said, though in truth her wrists throbbed painfully. "Maybe so, but we are going to take care of them anyway." He returned to his saddlebags and pulled out a clean cloth and a small bottle. "This is going to sting." He was right. When he poured the liquid over her wounds, it burned like fire. Olivia bit her lip to keep from crying out, determined not to show weakness. Grant worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning both wrists before tearing the cloth into strips and wrapping them carefully. "You are good at this," she observed. "Cowboys get hurt a lot. You learn to patch yourself and others up." He tied off the last bandage. "That should hold until we can get you to a proper doctor." "I cannot pay you," Olivia said quietly. "For any of this, I have nothing." "I already told you I have been paid, And even if I had not been, I would still help you." He packed away his supplies and stood. "We should get moving. I want to reach San Gabriel before full dark." San Gabriel turned out to be a small town that seemed to consist primarily of a general store, a church, a saloon, and a boarding house. Grant guided them to the boarding house, a neat two-story structure with a porch that wrapped around three sides. An older woman with kind eyes and graying hair answered his knock. "Evening, madam," Grant said, removing his hat. "My wife and I are hoping you might have a room available for the night." The woman's gaze moved from Grant to Olivia, taking in her disheveled appearance and the bandages on her wrists. For a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought she would turn them away or worse, raise an alarm. But then the woman's expression softened. "Of course, dear. Come in, come in." She stepped aside to let them enter. "I am Mrs. Patterson. You both look exhausted. When did you last eat?" "This morning," Grant lied smoothly. "We have been traveling since before dawn." "Well, that will not do at all. I will have my daughter bring up some supper once you are settled." She led them up a narrow staircase to a small but clean room with a single bed, a washstand, and a chair by the window. "There is fresh water in the pitcher and clean linens on the bed. Supper will be up shortly." After she left, Olivia and Grant stood awkwardly in the small space, suddenly very aware that they were alone together in a bedroom. Grant cleared his throat. "You take the bed," he said. "I will sleep on the floor. You have done so much already. You should not have to sleep on the floor." "I have slept in worse places, believe me." He set his saddlebags down and moved to the washstand, pouring water into the basin. "Why do not you clean up first? I will wait outside until you are done and the food arrives." He was gone before she could protest, pulling the door closed behind him. Olivia stood alone in the quiet room, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. This morning she had been a prisoner, chained and heading toward what seemed like certain death. Now she was free, in a comfortable room, with a man who was risking everything to help her. She moved to the washstand and caught sight of herself in the small mirror hanging above it. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Her face was gaunt and pale beneath the layer of dust, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Her dress, once a respectable gray cotton, was stained and torn. She looked exactly like what she was, a desperate fugitive. Olivia stripped off the ruined dress and used the water and a cloth to wash away 3 days of sweat and grime. It was not a proper bath, but it helped her feel more human. She had just finished dressing again when a soft knock came at the door. "Miss," a young woman's voice called, "I have your supper." Olivia opened the door to find a girl of perhaps 16 holding a large tray. Grant stood behind her in the hallway, waiting patiently. The girl set the tray on the small table by the window and bobbed a curtsy before hurrying out. Grant entered and closed the door, eyeing the food appreciatively. "Mrs. Patterson is generous," he said. The tray held 2 plates piled with roast chicken, potatoes, carrots, and thick slices of fresh bread, along with 2 glasses of milk. "Let us eat before it gets cold." They sat together, Olivia on the edge of the bed and Grant in the chair, the tray balanced between them. For several minutes, neither spoke, too focused on the food. Olivia could not remember the last time she had eaten something so delicious. The meals in the Austin jail had been barely edible, and the marshals had only given her dried beef and stale bread during the journey. "Better?" Grant asked when she finally slowed down. "Much." She took a sip of milk. "Thank you for all of this. You keep thanking me. You do not need to. I do, though. You could have left me on that coach. You could have walked away and let them take me to Lano, but you did not." Grant set down his fork and looked at her directly. "What you were accused of stealing," he said. "The brooch, did you take it?" There it was, the question she had been waiting for. Olivia met his gaze steadily, not intentionally. When he cornered me in his room, when he tried to force me, I fought back. I scratched his face and ran. I did not realize until later that the brooch had gotten tangled in my apron during the struggle. By the time I found it, he had already told his father I had stolen it, and they had already sent men to arrest me. I tried to explain what happened, but no one would listen. He was the son of a wealthy merchant, and I was just a hotel maid. Who were they going to believe? "I believe you," Grant said simply. Those 3 words, spoken with such certainty, nearly undid her. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. "You do not even know me." "I know enough. I know Samuel Chen is a good judge of character, and he believed you. I know your eyes when you talk about what happened. You cannot fake that kind of truth." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "You are not a thief, Olivia Montgomery. You are a survivor, and you deserve better than what they tried to give you." A tear escaped despite her best efforts, rolling down her cheek. Grant reached out as if to brush it away, then seemed to think better of it and pulled his hand back. Instead, he offered her his handkerchief. "Get some rest," he said gently, standing and gathering the empty plates onto the tray. "We have got a long ride ahead of us tomorrow, and you need to recover your strength." He left the room briefly to return the tray, then came back with a blanket he must have gotten from Mrs. Patterson. He spread it on the floor on the far side of the bed, then removed his gun, belt, and vest, setting them carefully within reach. "Blow out the lamp whenever you are ready," he said, stretching out on the floor. "And do not worry, you are safe here." Olivia changed into a clean nightgown that Mrs. Patterson had thoughtfully left folded on the bed, then climbed under the covers. The mattress was soft, the sheets clean and smelling of lavender. She should have fallen asleep immediately, but instead she lay awake, listening to Grant's steady breathing in the darkness. "Grant," she whispered. "Yeah. What happens after New Mexico? Where am I supposed to go?" He was quiet for a moment. "I have got contacts in Santa Fe, people who can help you establish a new identity, find work, start over. You will be safe there. And you, what will you do? Go back to Texas? There are always more people who need help. Does it not get lonely? Moving around all the time, never staying in one place." Another long pause. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but it is the life I chose." Olivia wanted to ask more, wanted to understand this complicated man who had literally ridden to her rescue, but exhaustion was finally catching up with her. Her eyes grew heavy, and she felt herself drifting. "Good night, Grant," she murmured. "Good night, Olivia." She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee. Grant was already up, dressed and freshly shaved, standing by the window with a steaming cup in his hand. He turned when he heard her stir. "Morning. There is water if you want to wash up," and Mrs. Patterson sent up coffee and breakfast rolls. He gestured to the tray on the table. "We should get moving soon, but take your time." Olivia sat up, pushing her tangled hair out of her face. In the morning light, Grant looked different, softer somehow. She realized with a start that he was quite handsome, and the thought made her blush. She quickly looked away, focusing on getting out of bed. They ate quickly and gathered their few belongings. Grant produced a simple blue dress from his saddlebags, along with a bonnet and a light shawl. "I had Samuel's daughter help me pick these out," he explained. "Your prison dress is too recognizable. You will need to look like a respectable married woman traveling with her husband." The dress fit reasonably well, if a bit loose in the waist. Olivia arranged her hair as best she could and put on the bonnet. When she turned to show Grant, something flickered in his eyes, an expression she could not quite read. "You look nice," he said, then cleared his throat. "I mean, you look like a proper lady, respectable." "Thank you." She smoothed down the skirt, feeling oddly pleased by his awkward compliment. They left San Gabriel with the rising sun at their backs, heading west toward New Mexico territory. The landscape gradually changed as they rode, the rolling hills giving way to flatter plains dotted with mesquite and prickly pear. They stopped periodically to rest the horse and stretch their legs, but Grant kept them moving at a steady pace. Around midday, they came to a larger town called Mason. Grant pulled up in front of a smithy, where a barrel-chested man with arms like tree trunks was hammering at an anvil. "Wait here," Grant told Olivia, dismounting. He approached the smith, and they spoke in low voices. The smith nodded and gestured for them to come inside. "Let us see what we are dealing with," the smith said, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a large man. He examined the shackles on Olivia's wrists, turning them carefully. "Federal issue. Good quality locks. Going to take me a few minutes." He worked with surprising delicacy, using various tools to probe the locks. Grant stood close to Olivia, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder in what she realized was a protective gesture. The smith glanced between them with knowing eyes but said nothing. Finally, with a satisfying click, the first shackle fell away. The second followed moments later. Olivia rubbed her wrists, feeling the blessed relief of freedom. The bandages were stained and dirty, and the skin beneath was red and angry-looking, but she was free. "Thank you," she breathed. The smith nodded, gathering up the shackles. "These will get melted down. Nobody will ever know they existed." He looked at Grant. "You folks be careful out there." "Always are," Grant replied, pressing coins into the man's hand. They rode on, and Olivia could not stop touching her wrists, marveling at the absence of the iron bands. Grant noticed and smiled. "Feels good, does it not? You have no idea." She looked at him curiously. "That man, the smith, he knew what we were doing. Why did he help us?" "Because he is a good man who understands that sometimes the law and justice are not the same thing." Grant adjusted his hat against the bright sun. "There are more people like that than you might think. You just have to know where to find them." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of the horse's gait soothing. Olivia found herself studying Grant's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes constantly scanned the horizon. He rode with the easy confidence of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. "How long have you been doing this?" she asked. "Helping people, I mean. About 4 years now. Started not long after my sister died." He was quiet for a moment. "At first, I was just angry. Angry at the system, at the people who failed her, at myself for not being there. Then I met a man in El Paso who was about to be hanged for a murder he did not commit. I had evidence that could clear him, witness testimony I had overheard by chance. I went to the sheriff, but he would not listen. So I broke the man out the night before his execution. You broke him out of jail, I did. Got him safely across the border into Mexico. A week later, someone else confessed to the murder. By then, it was too late to bring him back, but at least he was alive and free." Grant shook his head. "After that, word got around in certain circles. People started coming to me when they needed help when the law had failed them. I have done what I can." "That is incredibly brave, or incredibly stupid, depending on who you ask." But he smiled as he said it. "My mother certainly thinks so. She is always after me to settle down, find a nice girl, start a ranch like my older brother did. She worries. Mothers always do." Olivia felt a pang of sadness. Her own mother had died when she was 15, and her father had followed 2 years later. She had been alone in the world ever since. "Where does your family live?" "They have got a ranch outside of Fredericksburg. Good land, good cattle. My brother is doing well there with his wife and their 3 kids. They want me to join them, work the ranch together, but I cannot seem to stay put. There is always someone who needs help, always another wrong to try and make right. Do you ever think you will stop, Settle down like your mother once." Grant was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he was not going to answer. Finally, he said, "I used to think I would do this until I got caught or killed. That seemed like the only ending for someone like me. But lately, I do not know. I have been thinking maybe there is more to life than just running from town to town, fixing other people's problems." "What changed?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Olivia felt her breath catch. There was something in his eyes, something warm and searching that made her heart beat faster. "I am not entirely sure," he said softly, "but something did." They reached Fort McCavitt by late afternoon, a military outpost that had seen better days. Grant explained that they would skirt around it rather than ride through, avoiding any potential encounters with soldiers who might ask uncomfortable questions. They made camp that night in a small canyon, sheltered from the wind and hidden from the main road. Grant proved to be an efficient campmaker, quickly gathering wood for a fire and setting up a simple meal of beans, bacon, and coffee. Olivia tried to help, but he waved her off. "You rest. You are still recovering. I have been resting all day. Riding all day is not the same as resting, trust me." He poured her a cup of coffee. "Besides, I have been doing this for years. I can manage." They ate as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. The temperature dropped quickly once the sun disappeared, and Olivia found herself grateful for the shawl. Grant noticed her shiver and moved closer, building up the fire. "It gets cold in the desert at night," he said. "I've got blankets in my bedroll. You will be warm enough. What about you?" "I will be fine. I have slept in worse conditions." After they finished eating, Grant cleaned the dishes while Olivia sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Her mind kept returning to the question he had asked her in the boarding house, what she had stolen. She thought about the brooch, how its diamonds had caught the light as it tangled in her apron. She thought about the merchant's son, his sweaty hands and sour breath, the way he had smiled when she was dragged away in chains. "You are thinking too hard," Grant said, settling down across from her. "I can see it on your face. I was just wondering what my life would be like right now if that night had gone differently. If I had never gone to his room, if someone had come when I screamed, if anyone had believed me. You cannot torture yourself with what-ifs. That path leads nowhere good." "How do you do it? How do you keep going after everything that happened with your sister?" Grant stared into the fire, his expression distant. "Some days are harder than others. But I figure as long as I am helping people, as long as I am making even a small difference, then maybe her death was not completely meaningless. Maybe I can prevent someone else from going through what she did, what you almost did." "She would be proud of you," Olivia said softly. "I am sure of that. I hope so." He looked up at her, and in the firelight his eyes seemed almost to glow. "What about you? What are you going to do once you get to Santa Fe, once you have got your new identity?" "I have not thought that far ahead. Just surviving each day has taken all my energy." She considered the question. "I suppose I will need to find work. I was a maid before, but maybe I could do something else. I have always liked working with fabrics, sewing and such. Maybe I could apprentice with a seamstress." "You are good with your hands. I like to think so." "My mother taught me to sew when I was young. She made the most beautiful dresses, intricate embroidery and delicate stitching. I used to watch her for hours." Olivia smiled at the memory. "She always said I had talent, that I could be really good if I practiced." "Then you should do that. Find a seamstress in Santa Fe who needs help. Build a life doing something you love. It sounds like a dream. Dreams can become reality. You just have to survive long enough to make them happen." They talked long into the night, sharing stories about their childhoods, their families, their hopes and fears. Olivia learned that Grant had grown up on his family's ranch, learning to ride before he could properly walk. He talked about his sister, Maria, who had been 2 years younger and fearless, always getting into trouble and dragging him along with her. He talked about his brother, James, who was steady and responsible, everything Grant felt he was not. In turn, Olivia told him about her parents, about growing up in a small house in Austin where her father worked as a carpenter and her mother took in sewing work. She talked about the quiet joy of her childhood, the way her parents had loved each other, the way they had made her feel safe and cherished. And she talked about the loneliness after they died, the desperate scramble to survive on her own, the choice to take the hotel job because it came with room and board. "I never wanted much," she said. "Just a safe place to live, enough to eat, maybe someday a family of my own." Simple things that suddenly seemed impossible. "They are not impossible," Grant said firmly. "You will have those things, Olivia, I promise you that. You cannot promise something like that. Watch me." He stood and retrieved his bedroll, spreading it out near the fire. "Come on, you need to sleep. We have got another long day ahead of us tomorrow." He arranged the blankets so she would be warm and comfortable, then settled himself on the opposite side of the fire. Olivia lay down, watching him through the dancing flames. He had his hat pulled low over his face, arms crossed over his chest, looking completely relaxed despite the hard ground beneath him. "Grant," she said quietly. "Yeah, thank you. For everything. For believing me, for helping me, for making me feel like maybe I've got a future after all." He tipped his hat back so she could see his face. "You do have a future, Olivia, a good one, and you do not need to thank me for doing what is right." She fell asleep watching him, feeling safer than she had in months, maybe years. When she woke in the middle of the night, cold and disoriented, she found that Grant had moved closer and draped an extra blanket over her. He was still asleep on the other side of the fire, but the gesture warmed her more than the blanket did. They set out again at dawn, riding steadily west. The landscape grew more rugged, with rocky outcroppings and deep arroyos cutting through the red earth. They passed the occasional ranch or homestead, but Grant kept them moving, never stopping for more than a few minutes at a time. Around noon on the third day of their journey, they crested a rise and saw a small town spread out in the valley below. Grant pulled up, studying it carefully. "That is Junction," he said. "We can resupply there, maybe get a hot meal, but we need to be careful. This is the last real town before we head into more remote territory." They rode in slowly, alert for any signs of trouble. Junction was larger than San Gabriel, but still small by most standards, with a proper main street lined with shops and businesses. Grant tied the horse outside a general store and helped Olivia dismount. "Stay close to me," he murmured. "If anyone asks, we have been married 2 months and we are headed to New Mexico to homestead." Inside the store, they moved through the aisles, selecting supplies. Olivia found herself playing the role of dutiful wife, commenting on prices and quality while Grant nodded along. The shopkeeper, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose, watched them with mild interest but no suspicion. As Grant paid for their purchases, the door opened and 2 men walked in wearing badges. Olivia's heart leaped into her throat, but Grant's hand found hers and squeezed gently, warning her to stay calm. "Afternoon, Sheriff," the shopkeeper said. "What can I do for you?" "Just checking in, Harold. We got a wire from Austin about an escaped prisoner. Young woman, red hair, probably traveling west. You seen anyone like that?" Olivia felt the blood drain from her face, but Grant's grip on her hand tightened, anchoring her. The shopkeeper glanced at them, and for a terrible moment she thought he would point them out. Instead, he shook his head. "Cannot say I have." "When did she escape?" "Few days ago. Overpowered her guards somehow, stole a horse. They think she might be headed for Mexico." The sheriff's gaze swept the store, passing over Olivia without really seeing her. The bonnet and respectable dress had transformed her completely. "I will keep an eye out," the shopkeeper said. "Let you know if anyone suspicious comes through." The sheriff nodded and left with his deputy. Olivia felt like she might faint, but Grant kept his composure, thanking the shopkeeper and guiding her smoothly out of the store. They loaded their supplies onto the horse with unhurried movements, though Olivia could feel the tension radiating from Grant. "Do not look back," he murmured as they mounted up. "Just act natural." They rode out of Junction at a casual pace, but once they were out of sight of the town, Grant urged the horse into a faster gait. They rode hard for an hour before he finally slowed, pulling off the main trail and into a cluster of rocks. "Are you all right?" he asked, helping her down. "I think so. My heart is still racing." She leaned against a boulder, trying to catch her breath. "They are looking for me." "What are we going to do?" "We are going to keep doing exactly what we have been doing. That sheriff did not even look twice at you. As far as anyone is concerned, you are my wife, a respectable married woman. The disguise is working. But what if someone figures it out? What if the next sheriff is more observant?" Grant stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate that Olivia's breath caught. His eyes searched hers, intense and burning. "Listen to me. I am not going to let anything happen to you. Do you understand? I will get you safely to New Mexico no matter what. You have to trust me." "I do," she whispered. "I trust you." Something shifted between them in that moment, some invisible line being crossed. Grant's thumb brushed her cheek, and Olivia felt heat spread through her body. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her, she realized with a start. This man who had saved her, who believed in her, who made her feel like she mattered. But Grant stepped back, letting his hands fall away. "We should keep moving. Put more distance between us and Junction." They rode in silence for the rest of the afternoon, both lost in their own thoughts. Olivia could not stop thinking about that moment, the way his hands had felt on her face, the intensity in his eyes. She had known this man for only a few days, and yet she felt drawn to him in a way she had never experienced before. As the sun began to set, they made camp in a small grove of cottonwoods near a creek. Grant was quieter than usual as he set up camp, his movements efficient but distracted. Olivia watched him, trying to decipher his mood. "Did I do something wrong?" she finally asked as they ate their simple dinner. Grant looked up, surprised. "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that? You have barely said 2 words since we left those rocks." "I thought maybe you were angry with me for freezing up in that store." "Olivia, no." He set down his plate and moved to sit beside her. "You did not do anything wrong. You kept your composure perfectly. That sheriff did not suspect a thing." "Then why are you being so quiet?" He was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. "Because I am having thoughts I should not be having," he finally said. "About you, about us, about this situation." Olivia's heart began to pound. What kind of thoughts? The kind that complicate things. He looked at her then, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath away. "I am supposed to be helping you, protecting you, getting you safely to New Mexico. I am not supposed to be feeling things for you. But I am, and it is making everything more difficult. What if I am feeling things too?" The words were out before Olivia could stop them. "What if I have been feeling things since the moment you helped me out of that stagecoach?" Grant's jaw tightened. "You are vulnerable right now. You have been through hell, and I am the person who helped you. It would be easy to confuse gratitude with something else." "Do not tell me what I am feeling," Olivia said, a flash of anger cutting through her nervousness. "I know the difference between gratitude and this. You make me feel safe, yes, but you also make me feel alive. When you look at me, I feel like I matter, Like I am more than just a problem to be solved or a burden to be carried. You do matter. You are not a burden. Then why are you pulling away from me? Because if I do not, I am going to kiss you, Grant said roughly. And if I kiss you, everything changes. I lose my objectivity, my ability to think clearly. You deserve better than someone like me, someone who is always running, always looking over his shoulder. Maybe I do not want better. Maybe I want you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Grant stared at her, conflict warring in his expression. Then, with something like surrender, he closed the distance between them and captured her lips with his. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving her the chance to pull away. But Olivia had no intention of pulling away. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, kissing him back with all the pent-up emotion of the past few days. Grant made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair while the other wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grant rested his forehead against hers. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured. "Probably," Olivia agreed. "Are you going to stop?" "I do not think I can." He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. "You have gotten under my skin, Olivia Montgomery. I have no idea what to do about it. Figure it out later. Kiss me now." He did, thoroughly and completely, until they were both dizzy with it. When they finally pulled apart for air, Grant guided her to sit between his legs, her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire and the stars emerging overhead. "What happens when we reach Santa Fe?" Olivia asked quietly. "I do not know. I have not thought that far ahead. You always have a plan. Not this time." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "This is new territory for me. I have never gotten involved with someone I was helping before. Never, never. I made it a rule. Keep things professional, keep my distance. But you made me break every rule I set for myself." Olivia turned in his arms so she could see his face. "I do not want to be just a job to you, Grant. I do not want you to drop me off in Santa Fe and disappear. Is that selfish of me? No. It is human." He cupped her face in his hands. "I do not want that either, but I do not know how this works. My life is not exactly stable. I am wanted in 3 territories for helping prisoners escape. I have no home, no real income beyond what people pay me for jobs. What kind of life is that to offer someone? It is better than being alone. It is better than spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder by myself. You deserve more than that. You deserve a home, stability, safety. I deserve to be with someone who sees me, who believes in me, who makes me feel the way you do." Olivia kissed him softly. "Everything else we can figure out together." Grant searched her eyes, and whatever he saw there seemed to settle something in him. "Together," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." They held each other as the fire burned down to embers, neither willing to let go. Eventually, Grant arranged their blankets together, and they lay down side by side. He pulled her close, her head pillowed on his shoulder, and for the first time since her arrest, Olivia felt truly at peace. The next few days of travel took on a different quality. They still rode hard, still stayed alert for trouble, but there was an undercurrent of joy now, a lightness that had not been there before. Grant was more relaxed, quicker to smile, and Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in years. They talked constantly, sharing everything from childhood memories to dreams for the future. One afternoon, as they watered the horse at a small stream, Grant taught Olivia how to shoot his rifle. She was awkward at first, the weapon heavy and unwieldy in her hands, but he was patient, showing her how to sight down the barrel and squeeze the trigger gently. "You are not bad at this," he said after she managed to hit a dead tree trunk 3 times in a row. "Natural talent." Or a good teacher, she countered, grinning at him. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her soundly. Both. Definitely both. They crossed into New Mexico territory on a bright morning, the landscape shifting to higher elevations with pinon pines and juniper dotting the hillsides. Grant explained that they were about 3 days' ride from Santa Fe now, maybe 4 if they took their time. We should discuss what happens when we get there, he said as they made camp that night. My contact can get you papers, a new identity. You will need to decide what name you want to use, what story you want to tell about your past. What if I do not want a new identity? Olivia asked. What if I want to be myself? Olivia, the law is looking for you. If you use your real name, someone will eventually make the connection. Then I will use a different first name but keep Montgomery. It is my father's name, my family's name. I do not want to lose that. She thought for a moment. I could be Ophelia. It is close enough to Olivia that I will remember to answer to it. Ophelia Montgomery, Grant said, testing the name. I like it. It suits you. And my story, keep it as close to the truth as possible. Lies are easier to maintain that way. You are from Austin originally, parents deceased. You worked in a hotel. But instead of being arrested, you decided to head west to start fresh. You met me, we fell in love, and we are traveling together. He paused. Unless you want a different story. That one sounds perfect because most of it is true. Olivia moved closer to him. When do we tell people we got married? We are not actually married, Grant reminded her gently. The papers I have are forgeries just for travel. I know that. But if we are staying together, people will expect us to be married. It was different when we were just traveling, but in Santa Fe, if we are living in the same place, trying to build a life, we will need to make it real. Grant was quiet, his expression unreadable. Are you asking me to marry you? Would it be so terrible if I was? No, he said slowly. Not terrible. Terrifying, maybe. I have never thought about getting married, settling down. It seemed impossible given the life I lead. Maybe it is time to think about leading a different life. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. You are asking me to give up everything I have been doing for the past 4 years, to stop helping people, to stay in one place, to be normal. I am asking you to think about what you want for yourself, not just what you think you owe your sister or the world. Is this really the life you want forever? Or were you just afraid to let yourself imagine something else? Grant was silent for a long time, his face buried in her hair. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I was afraid. After Maria died, after I realized I had failed her, I could not let myself have a normal life. It felt wrong, like I did not deserve happiness when she never got the chance. So I threw myself into this work, helping others, always moving, never stopping long enough to feel the loss. She would not want that for you. She would want you to be happy. I know. Logically, I know that, but knowing and feeling are different things. Olivia turned in his arms so she could see his face. I am not asking you to forget her or to stop caring about justice, but maybe you can find a way to make a difference without sacrificing your own life. Maybe we can build something together that honors her memory while also giving us a future. How did you get so wise? Grant asked, a small smile playing at his lips. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. She kissed him softly. I do not need an answer right now. Just promise me you will think about it. I promise. They reached Santa Fe on a warm afternoon, the adobe buildings glowing golden in the sunlight. It was larger than any town they had passed through, with a proper plaza and streets lined with shops and homes. Grant led them to a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town, stopping in front of a small house with a well-tended garden. This is where my contact lives, he explained, helping Olivia down from the horse. Her name is Elena Rodriguez. She has helped me with several cases over the years. A woman in her 40s answered Grant's knock, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw him. "Grant, it has been too long." Then her gaze moved to Olivia and understanding lit her eyes. "And this must be the young lady you wrote about. Elena, this is Olivia Montgomery." "Olivia, Elena Rodriguez." Come in, Elena said, ushering them inside. Her home was cozy and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh baked bread. "You must be exhausted from your journey. Sit. I will bring you something to eat and drink." Over bread and coffee, Elena explained what she could do to help. She had connections with a lawyer who specialized in preparing new identity papers, and she knew several shop owners in town who might be willing to hire Olivia without asking too many questions. "There is a seamstress on San Francisco Street who is looking for help," Elena said. "Her name is Magdalena Santos. She is a good woman and she does not pry into people's pasts. I could introduce you if you would like." "That would be wonderful," Olivia said, feeling a flutter of excitement. The idea of actually working as a seamstress, of doing something she loved, seemed almost too good to be true. "And what about you, Grant?" Elena asked, her gaze shrewd. "Are you staying in Santa Fe, or is this just a brief stop before you head back to Texas?" Grant glanced at Olivia and she saw the conflict in his eyes. "I have not decided yet." "Well, you are welcome to stay here as long as you need," Elena said. "Both of you, I have a spare room and it is no trouble at all." They accepted her generous offer, and that night, for the first time in over a week, Olivia slept in a real bed in a safe house. Grant stayed in a chair by the window, watching over her, and when she woke in the middle of the night, she found him still there, his eyes soft as he looked at her. "Cannot sleep," she whispered, "just thinking." "About what?" He moved to the bed, sitting on the edge and taking her hand. "About what you said about choosing a different life, about what I want versus what I think I should do." "And what do you want, you?" he said simply. "I want you, and a life with you, and all the normal things I convinced myself I did not deserve. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to build something real and lasting. I want to stop running." Olivia sat up, her heart soaring. "Then stop. Stay here with me. We can make a life together. It will not be easy. I am still wanted in Texas. We will have to be careful. I am already a fugitive, remember? We are both running. At least we can run together." Grant laughed, the sound filled with relief and joy. "Together. God, I love the sound of that." He cupped her face in his hands. "Marry me, Olivia. Really marry me, not just papers and pretend. Marry me and let us build a life here." "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, absolutely yes." He kissed her then, pouring all his hope and fear and love into it. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. "We should probably wait a respectable amount of time," Grant said. "People might talk if we get married too quickly. Let them talk. I have waited long enough for happiness. I do not want to wait any longer." "Impatient woman." "Determined woman," she corrected. "There is a difference." Elena was delighted when they told her their plans the next morning. She immediately began organizing, talking about flowers and witnesses and a celebration after the ceremony. Olivia found herself swept up in the preparations, grateful for Elena's enthusiasm and expertise. True to her word, Elena introduced Olivia to Magdalena Santos, who hired her on the spot after seeing her needlework. The seamstress was a kind woman in her 60s with nimble fingers and a sharp eye for detail. She asked no questions about Olivia's past, simply put her to work hemming skirts and mending tears. Grant, meanwhile, met with Elena's lawyer contact and arranged for both of them to have proper documentation. Olivia became Olivia Montgomery officially, with papers showing she was born and raised in Austin. Grant kept his real name, as he had never been formally charged with any crimes. He was just wanted for questioning in several territories. They were married 2 weeks after arriving in Santa Fe, in a simple ceremony at the San Miguel Chapel. Elena and her husband stood as witnesses, along with Magdalena and a few other friends Elena had made over the years. Olivia wore a dress she and Magdalena had made together, simple but elegant in cream-colored silk. Grant wore his best clothes, his hair freshly cut, looking so handsome that Olivia's breath caught when she saw him waiting at the altar. The priest spoke in Spanish and English, blessing their union and speaking of love and commitment. When Grant slid a simple gold ring onto Olivia's finger, his eyes were wet with unshed tears. "I promise to love you, protect you, and stand by you for the rest of my life," he said, his voice strong and clear. "You saved me just as much as I saved you, Olivia. You gave me permission to have a future, to want something more than just atonement. I will spend every day trying to deserve that gift." "You already deserve it," Olivia said, her own tears flowing freely. "You are good and brave and kind, and I am so lucky to have found you. I promise to love you, believe in you, and build a life with you that honors everything we have both been through." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and the small gathering erupted in applause and cheers. Elena had prepared a feast at her home, and they celebrated late into the night with food, music, and dancing. Grant proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, spinning Olivia around the room until they were both dizzy and laughing. "Happy," he murmured, holding her close as a slower song played. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. "You, so happy it scares me sometimes, like maybe I do not deserve this, like it might all disappear. It is not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere." She pressed a kiss to his jaw. "We have got each other now, for better or worse." "Definitely for better," Grant said, pulling her closer. "I am going to make sure it is always better." With Elena's help, they found a small house to rent on the outskirts of Santa Fe, a simple 2-room adobe structure with a garden and a small stable for their horse. It was not much, but to Olivia, it felt like a palace. She and Grant spent their first week as a married couple fixing up the house, making it truly theirs. Grant built furniture while Olivia sewed curtains and cushions, and slowly the bare rooms transformed into a home. Olivia continued working for Magdalena, who was impressed with her skill and began teaching her more advanced techniques. Grant found work as a ranch hand at a nearby spread, using his years of cowboy experience to earn a steady income. It was honest work, hard but satisfying, and he came home each evening tired but content. In the evenings, they would sit together in their small garden, watching the sun set over the mountains and talking about their day. Sometimes Grant would play a battered guitar he had bought from a traveling merchant, singing old cowboy songs in a surprisingly pleasant voice. Olivia would sew by lamplight, creating beautiful garments that Magdalena sold for impressive prices. Their first real test came 6 months after their wedding, when a U.S. Marshal came through Santa Fe asking questions about escaped prisoners. Grant and Olivia spent a tense few days staying close to home, avoiding town, but the Marshal moved on without incident. It seemed that Olivia's new identity was holding, and Grant's name had not yet made it onto any official wanted lists. "We cannot live in fear forever," Olivia said one night as they lay in bed, listening to the desert wind outside. "Maybe we should consider moving further west, somewhere even more remote. Or maybe we should contact a lawyer, see if there is any way to clear your name," Grant suggested. "We have got money saved now. We could hire someone good, someone who could investigate what really happened with that merchant's son. After all this time, the trial was over a year ago. The truth does not expire. If we could find evidence, witness testimony, maybe we could get your conviction overturned." Olivia considered this. The idea of actually clearing her name, of being able to use her real identity again, was tantalizing, but it was also risky. Reopening the case meant drawing attention to herself, admitting where she was. "I will think about it," she finally said. "But not yet. I want to enjoy this life we have built a little longer before we risk it." Grant pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Whatever you decide, I am with you." A year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She and Grant had talked about having children someday, but somehow the reality of it felt overwhelming. What if something went wrong? What if the law finally caught up with them? How could they raise a child while constantly looking over their shoulders? But Grant was ecstatic, his face lighting up when she told him. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to be parents." "Are you scared?" Olivia asked him one night, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Terrified," he admitted, "but also excited. This child will be living proof that we survived, that we built something good out of all the pain and injustice. That matters." Their son was born on a crisp autumn morning, with Alina serving as midwife and Grant holding Olivia's hand through every contraction. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced, Grant actually sobbed, cradling the tiny bundle with infinite gentleness. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Samuel after the man who had first hired Grant to save Olivia. Samuel Chen came to visit when the baby was 2 months old, making the long journey from Austin specifically to meet his namesake. He was an elderly man now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were sharp and kind. "You have made a good life here," he said, looking around their small but comfortable home. "I am glad my money was well spent." "You saved my life," Olivia told him, pressing his hand. "I can never repay you for that. You do not need to repay me. Just be happy, raise this beautiful boy, and live the life you were meant to have. That is payment enough." Samuel stayed for a week, regaling them with stories about Austin and the changes that had taken place there. He mentioned, almost casually, that the merchant's son had been arrested for assaulting another young woman. This time, the woman had powerful connections, and her family had pressed charges. During the investigation, several other women had come forward with similar stories, including the daughter of Samuel Chen himself. "They found the brooch, too," Samuel said quietly, "in his room, hidden in a drawer. He had reported it stolen, so his father would not realize he had lost it during his attack on you. When the authorities confronted him with the evidence, he confessed to everything." Olivia felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. "He confessed to lying about me, to lying, to assault, to fabricating evidence. He is in prison now and likely to stay there for a very long time." Samuel met her eyes. "Your name has been cleared, Olivia. The conviction was overturned. You are a free woman." The news was almost too much to process. After everything, after all the running and hiding and fear, she was free. Truly free. Olivia burst into tears and Grant wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she shook with relief. "You can go back to being Olivia Montgomery if you want," Samuel said, "or you can stay as Ophelia. The choice is yours." "I think I will stay Ophelia," she said after a long moment. Olivia was the girl who had terrible things happen to her. Ophelia is the woman who survived and built a new life. I like being her. Grant smiled and kissed her temple. "I love you, whoever you choose to be." With her name cleared, some of the constant tension that had marked their life began to ease. They were still cautious, still careful, but the fear of being arrested and torn apart faded. Grant even began to take on occasional work helping others who had been wrongly accused, using his skills and connections to investigate cases and find evidence. It was not the same as his old life of breaking prisoners out of jails, but it allowed him to continue fighting for justice in a safer, more legitimate way. Olivia's work with Magdalena flourished. She developed a reputation for exquisite embroidery and fine detail work, and customers began requesting her specifically. Eventually, Magdalena offered to make her a partner in the business, and Olivia accepted. They renamed the shop Santos and Navarro Fine Dressmaking, and it became one of the most successful establishments in Santa Fe. Their son Samuel grew into a bright, curious toddler with his father's blue eyes and his mother's auburn hair. Grant was a devoted father, spending every free moment playing with the boy, teaching him to ride a horse almost as soon as he could walk. Olivia would watch them together, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. When Samuel was 3, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, a daughter joined their family, a tiny girl with fierce lungs and her father's stubbornness. They named her Maria after Grant's sister, and Grant cried again when he held her for the first time. "She would have loved to meet you," he whispered to the baby. "My sister. You have her name and her spirit, I can already tell." As the years passed, their life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew, the business thrived, and Grant and Olivia's love deepened with each passing day. They added 2 more children to their family, another son named James after Grant's brother, and a youngest daughter they called Rose. On their 10th anniversary, Grant took Olivia back to the San Miguel chapel where they had been married. Elena, now well into her 70s, joined them, along with their 4 children and a crowd of friends they had made over the years. 10 years, Grant said, holding both of Olivia's hands. 10 years since you agreed to take a chance on a cowboy with more baggage than sense. Best decision I ever made, Olivia replied, smiling up at him. Even counting the parts where I was terrified we would be caught. We survived. More than that, we thrived. He pulled her close, not caring that everyone was watching. I love you, Olivia, Ophelia. Whatever name you use, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you too, she whispered. Thank you for unlocking my chains and giving me a life worth living. They renewed their vows that day, with their children standing beside them and the priest blessing their family. Afterward, they had a grand celebration at their much larger house. They had bought a few years earlier with their combined success. The party lasted long into the night, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. As the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Grant and Olivia stood together on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast New Mexico sky. Their children were asleep inside, worn out from the festivities. The night was quiet and peaceful, the air sweet with the scent of sage. "Do you ever think about that day on the road?" Olivia asked, leaning against Grant's solid warmth. "When you stopped the stagecoach, all the time," he admitted. "It was the day my life really started. Before that, I was just existing, going through the motions. But you gave me a reason to want more, to be more. I was so scared when you opened that door. I had no idea who you were or what you wanted. And then you asked me what I had stolen. And you told me the truth. That was what convinced me, you know. The raw honesty in your voice, the way you looked at me like you were waiting for me to judge you but hoping I would not." He turned her in his arms so he could see her face in the moonlight. "You were so brave, even in chains, even when you had every reason to give up. I did not feel brave. I felt broken. But you were not. You survived, fought back, and when I offered you a chance at freedom, you took it. You could have given up at any point, could have let fear or despair win. But you did not. You chose to keep going, to build something beautiful out of tragedy. That is the bravest thing I have ever seen." Olivia reached up to cup his face, her thumb tracing the lines that time had added to his features. He was older now, approaching 40, with silver threading through his hair and weathering around his eyes. But to her, he was more handsome than ever. "We did this together," she said softly. "You saved me that day, but I think maybe I saved you too." "You did. Absolutely you did." He kissed her, slow and sweet, a kiss that spoke of 10 years of love and partnership and shared joy. "Here is to the next 10 years and all the ones after that." "To forever," Olivia agreed. They stood together on the porch long after the last guest had left, holding each other under the stars. Inside, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved and unaware of the darkness their parents had emerged from to create this light. The house was filled with laughter and warmth, the business thrived, and their love had only grown stronger with time. Grant thought about his sister sometimes, about the guilt that had driven him for so long. But now, instead of pain, he felt gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the people he had helped, and especially for the chain of events that had led him to Olivia. He liked to think Maria would be happy for him, would approve of the life he had built and the family he was raising. Olivia thought about that day in the Austin courtroom, when the judge had sentenced her to 5 years of hard labor. She thought about the fear and despair that had consumed her during those 3 days in the stagecoach. If someone had told her then that she would end up here, married to a wonderful man with 4 beautiful children and a successful business, she would not have believed them. But life, they had both learned, was full of unexpected turns. Justice could fail, but people could save each other. Pain could transform into purpose. And love, real love, could bloom even in the harshest conditions. As Grant led Olivia back inside, his arm around her waist, they passed the front room where their wedding portrait hung on the wall. In it, they looked so young, so hopeful, so determined to make their impossible situation work. Now, 10 years later, they had done more than make it work. They had built something extraordinary. Their youngest daughter, Rose, stirred as they checked on the children, and Olivia scooped her up, holding the sleepy 4-year-old close. Grant gathered Samuel, now 13 and almost as tall as his mother, who had fallen asleep in a chair. Together, they tucked their children into their beds, moving quietly through the house they had made into a home. In their own room, Grant helped Olivia out of her celebration dress, his fingers gentle on the buttons. They had been married 10 years, but the spark between them had never faded. If anything, it had grown stronger, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. "I would do it all again," Grant murmured, pulling her into bed beside him. "Every dangerous moment, every close call, every second of fear, all of it just to end up here with you." "So would I," Olivia agreed, settling into his embrace. "Though perhaps with slightly less drama next time," he laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Where is the fun in that?" They fell asleep wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. The chains that had once bound Olivia were long gone, melted down and forgotten. In their place were wedding rings, symbols not of constraint but of choice, of 2 people who had found each other against all odds and decided to build a life together. The years continued to pass peacefully. Samuel grew into a fine young man, smart and compassionate, with his father's sense of justice and his mother's artistic eye. He eventually went to university to study law, determined to help others the way his parents had been helped. Maria proved to be as fearless as her namesake, with a gift for horses that had Grant beaming with pride. James was quiet and thoughtful, preferring books to action, while Rose had inherited her mother's talent for sewing and spent hours at Olivia's side, learning the craft. Grant and Olivia grew old together, their hair silvering, their movements slowing but their love never diminishing. They expanded the house to accommodate visiting children and grandchildren. The business was eventually passed to Maria and Rose, who ran it with the same dedication their mother had shown. Samuel opened a law practice in Santa Fe that focused on defending those who could not afford representation, carrying on his father's work in a new way. And James became a teacher, sharing his love of learning with a new generation. On their 50th anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, Grant and Olivia sat together in the garden they had planted 5 decades earlier. The roses were in full bloom, filling the air with their sweet scent. Their oldest grandson played guitar, the music drifting through the warm evening air. 50 years, Olivia marveled, her hand in Grant's. Can you believe it? Barely. It feels like both forever and no time at all. His grip on her hand was still strong, still steady. If I could go back and talk to that scared cowboy on that dusty road, I would tell him to hold on tight because the ride ahead is going to be extraordinary. What would you tell the girl in chains? I would tell her that she is stronger than she knows, braver than she believes, and that the best parts of her life are still ahead of her. I would tell her that one day, she will have everything she dreamed of and more. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her weathered knuckles. I would tell her that the cowboy who is about to unlock her chains is going to unlock her heart too, and that she should let him, because he is going to spend the rest of his life making sure she knows how precious she is. Tears streamed down Olivia's face, and she leaned against Grant's shoulder. Around them, their family laughed and talked and celebrated, a living testament to the love that had started on a dusty Texas road so many years ago. As the sun set over the New Mexico mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Grant pulled Olivia close and kissed her, just as he had done countless times over the past 50 years. Their children smiled, their grandchildren giggled, and the great-grandchildren clapped their chubby hands in delight. It was a perfect moment, the culmination of a love story that had started with chains and ended with freedom. A story of 2 people who had saved each other, who had chosen to build a life together despite the odds, and who had created something beautiful and lasting out of darkness and fear. That night, after the party had ended and the house was quiet, Grant and Olivia lay in bed, holding hands in the darkness. They were both tired, their bones aching, but their hearts were full. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, "for everything. For saving me, for loving me, for building this life with me." "Thank you for letting me," Grant replied, "for seeing past the broken parts to what I could be, for making me believe I deserved happiness. We both deserved it, we just had to find each other first." They fell asleep that way, hands clasped, hearts beating in rhythm. 2 souls who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and had chosen love over fear every single day since. Their story had started with a question, "What did you steal?" And the answer had changed both their lives forever. Because what Olivia had really stolen, though neither of them knew it at the time, was a cowboy's heart, and in return, he had given her the world. The end.